The Republic of Zambia is a landlocked nation in south-central Africa. Prior to 1964, when it gained independence from Great Britain, this land was known as Northern Rhodesia, as established by Cecil Rhodes in 1888. At just over 250,000 square miles, Texas by comparison is 292,000 square miles, Zambia is a nation of rivers. The Zambezi, and its tributary the Kafue, ranks only behind the Nile and Congo on the list of rivers of Africa. The Zambezi, the river of Mosi Oa-Tunya, or Victoria Falls, is named in honor of Queen Victoria by Dr. David Livingstone in 1855. The Republic of Zambia comprises 7 major tribes represented by its 7 provinces. The Western Province is home to the Lozi-speaking people, a collection of over 30 ethnic groups centered on the vast Barotse Plain. The Barotse Plain, one of the largest wetlands in the world, spreads over 2,800 square miles along the upper Zambezi River. Lozi people traditionally live in small villages, between 100 and 300 inhabitants, at the margin of the forest and the floodplain. The rainy season, beginning in November and continuing through March, brings floodwaters up to the edge of the traditional Lozi village. Those living along the Zambezi River or its tributaries make harvest of fish trapped on the floodplain or oxbow lakes as the floods recede. Farmers plant crops, corn, cassava, beans, greens, and melons, and plots at the edge of the annual flood. Shepherds drive small herds of cattle and goats to the nearest waters and grass in the mornings and back to the village corrals at night. This way of life predates cultural memory. Villagers cope with the long annual drought, May through October, by following the water, either by trekking further for surface water or by digging into the sand. Water can be typically found within 3 to 15 feet of the surface. Today, as with their ancestors, villages dig shallow pits to access this groundwater. However, as anyone knows who has dug into the beach as a child, you cannot dig below the water table or the hole collapses. At best, you can dig a few inches below the water table, leaving a shallow puddle. These hand-dug pits, with an inch or two of water, was the sole source of water in traditional villages generations ago. They still are. In June 2019, Professor Imasiku Nyambe of the University of Zambia invited his friend, hydrologist Joe Myman, to visit his native village on the Matabele portion of the Barotse Plain. Annual rains had failed to replenish the floodplain for the second straight year. An elderly man told Joe that he was a farmer and his family was hungry. The rains did not come. They were forced to rely solely on nuts gathered from the forest. He asked what could be done. How can it be that people in need of water to drink, to bathe, to irrigate crops and water stock, have an endless supply of water only a few feet beneath their feet and not take advantage of it? A solution is incredibly simple. It is very difficult to answer a hungry farmer who is in need of rain you can't give him. Returning to Lusaka, Joe and his colleague, Dr. Jonathan Levy of Miami University, thought it might be possible that a very old, simple, and reliable technique could solve the problem. As we cannot make it rain from the sky, we can make it rain from the ground. Using sandpoint wells driven into the underlying sand, the water table could be found and pumped to the surface with hand pumps. Joe and Imasiku returned to Kalenge village in November of 2019 with a load of hardware to test this concept. Could a simple sandpoint well with a hand pump provide clean water to the villagers? To get to the Matabele Plain is not easy. The road ends in Senenga, but that is not entirely true. The road continues, but the pavement does not. Nor does electricity, telephone, and any modern infrastructure. Continuing south along a sand track snaking between oxbow lakes and dry overflow channels, the road terminates at the confluence of the Lui and Zambezi rivers. A ferry across the Zambezi continues west to Kalangola, the jump-off of the Matabele Plain. One of the first communities encountered traveling west on the Matabele Plain is Kalenge Village, Imisiku's home village, and where test wells were installed in November 2019. Even in remote western Zambia, some places are less remote than others. This is why Kalinga village has a grade school, established in 2009 when the Czech Republic drilled a deep water well for the community. In 2020, the Ministry of Health installed a nurse to serve the 300 residents of Kalinga village. Progress follows water. With the help of the villagers, Joe, Imasiku, and local well driller John installed 4 sandpoint wells over the course of 2.5 days. They brought a tripod and block and tackle rigs thought needed to quickly drive the sandpoints. After installing a couple of wells, the village headman suggested that his men dig a well to the water table, about 10 feet below the surface, rather than pounding the sandpoint through the overlying sand. This cut the installation time from 3 hours to less than 1 hour. It also meant that the heavy tripod and sandbag weights were not needed for sandpoint installation. Joe says, "We were installing the 3rd well in Kalinga village when I saw a little girl dipping water from a puddle in the bottom of a 10-foot deep hand-dug well about 200 feet away. I said to her, knowing that she did not understand, 'Today I will put you out of business.' An hour later, she had her 5-gallon bucket under a new pump. Think of this. Imagine that today you have easy access to endless clean water, while yesterday it was dipped out of the bottom of an open pit. Today, for the first time, you can cook, clean, wash your baby, water your stock, and irrigate your garden without struggling to find enough water. Imagine, for the first time, it does not matter if the rainy season was a disappointment. They installed 4 sandpoint wells in Kalinga village. The concept was proven. Clean water can be provided using very elemental tools." When Joe returned to Kentucky, he started a Project Sheluka, LOSI for Water Coming Up from the Ground. Project Sheluka was granted 501c3 status in April 2020. Project Sheluka has the singular goal of bringing clean water to remote villages along the Barotse Plain. Project Sheluka installs sandpoint wells and hand pumps for communal use. The hardware becomes property of the village as administered by their councils. We do not charge the village for any materials or services. It really would not matter. Many people of these traditional villages do not have or use money. The traditional LOSI village relies on bartering of goods and services for an economy. There are hundreds of traditional LOSI villages that are in need of clean water. The question was, where to start? We rely on the advice of Professor Nyambe. As a native of the Barotse Plain, Dr. Nyambe has the trust of village councils and can best focus our best intentions. We asked Imisiku where we should start. He answered, "The people with the greatest need live on the Matabele Plain. They are also the most remote, and thus most challenging to help." Unlike traditional villages along the Zambezi or its tributaries, the 750-square-mile Matabele Plain does not have a perennial river. On rare occasions, it receives overflow from the Guando River, which also serves as the border with Angola. Still, even without a river, water is within a few feet of the surface on this desert floodplain. Project Sheluka funded a 2-week scouting expedition into the Matabele Plain during July 2020, winter in Zambia. The Matabele Plain averages 8 miles across and stretches 100 miles westwards from the Zambezi River into Angola. The scouting expedition introduced Project Sheluka to headmen and councils of 80 villages. Immediate need for 110 wells and pumps were documented. Each well will serve an average of 100 people. This is where Project Sheluka will begin. We will bring clean water to over 10,000 people in our initial effort. It will not be easy. At a minimum, to install 110 wells and pumps requires 2,200 feet of inch-and-quarter galvanized pipe, 900 couplers, 160 drive caps, 600 feet of 6-inch PVC pipe, and 110 hand pumps. We hope to find galvanized and PVC pipe locally. If not, then imported from South Africa. Sandpoints, couplers, and caps can be found in South Africa. We hope to be able to complete a sandpoint well and pump for $250, including shipping and installation labor. Project Sheluka will need $27,000 to bring clean water to the villages of the Matabele Plain. This is a lot of money if viewed as a single expenditure, but when normalized per person, fiscal perspective changes. As each well has the capacity to serve 100 people, and we will install 110 wells, total capacity will serve up to 11,000 people. If we serve 11,000 people with 110 wells at $250 per well, it means a single person can be assured clean water for about $2.50. The work before us will be challenging. These villages do not have ready access to clean water because they live on the edge of the world. It takes an effort to reach the edge of the world. If it was easy, it would have already been done. The immediacy of need cannot be overstated. Every rainy season that comes up short puts traditional villages in greater danger of extinction. Even in the best of times, these people rely dipping a couple of inches of water from the bottom of a hand-dug well. If you wish to become part of the effort to bring an endless supply of clean water to hundreds of traditional Lozi villages, please make a tax-deductible contribution to Project Sheluka. Visit our website at projectsheluka.org. We will update the website as we bring clean water first to the Matabele Plain and then throughout the greater Barotse Plain. If these Lozi people could speak to you, they would say, Loe tumela, kwamupuzo amizi amandi. Thank you for the gift of clean water.